Very interesting. All
Yeah,
right.
good.
Well, I think we'll move into the third phase of the interview.
Yeah.
I know it's a long one. So this is going to be a more of again, not that the rest hasn't been a little bit, but
A
more of a
lot.
speculative type phase of it. What could this mean going forward?
Okay.
And the first one that I had pointed out is that, okay, we're entering a phase of more pair production. All
Yeah.
right, that means that that means that there was a lot more energy in the Earth. Could this mean, and also we're going towards the center of the universe, that global warming is actually a real phenomenon, not
Yeah.
caused by carbon, but
Yeah.
caused by pair production? And could
Yeah.
this be something that's actually happening? And could this mean also why? I don't know if it's just because I'm seeing it more, but Dabu Seven's done a lot of good work on covering these type of events. There's a lot of earthquakes,
Yeah.
natural disaster type
Yeah.
events, and sinkholes, and
Sinkhole.
right,
The
and
earth,
how that
the earth cracking open as if it's like growing and it's just cracks open like I don't know, like if you put on too much weight and you rip your suit because it doesn't fit anymore.
it's like a metamorphosis type of thing too, like it's
Yeah.
cracking and becoming, you know.
Yeah.
But this would explain potentially why a lot of this could be coming, and if we are, a lot of prophecies have said that when we cross ages, while we're going into higher consciousness, we are going to have these growing pains,
Yeah.
especially in terms of like natural disasters
Yeah.
and such.
Yeah.
So could this mean that we are going through that? Very much potentially it could.
It's possible. The thing we don't know is how fast the earth grows as we go through these cycles. Is it Neil Adams presents it as it takes 80 million years for the earth to grow 50%, for example. And maybe that's right. Maybe it is. I've never measured the seabed. I wouldn't know how to begin doing that. And at the same time, I'm reluctant to just take the word of some mainstream scientist in a lab coat. I just don't feel that I can take their word on much of anything anymore unless I can verify it myself. I have no way to verify that. So is it possible that this is actually a bit more severe than that? Maybe. I'm just throwing a number out there. I'm just backed by air. Okay. Maybe the earth is going to grow by, say, 1% as we go through this transition out of the Kali Yuga. That would be a big deal. We live on this earth. This is our home. That I live just a few hundred miles away from a volcano that just recently woke up, actually, here in Costa Rica. So we would be looking potentially at more volcanoes. We'd be looking at more earthquakes, which is going to mean tsunamis. They just did the Cascadia Rising drill, the Cascadian subduction zone in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. There are predictions, prognostications that Seattle, Portland, Vancouver, Washington, and I would assume Vancouver, BC, and I love all those towns, that they're going to be underwater soon. How soon is soon? How can you predict earthquakes? Everybody talks about the big one coming. Is that going to be in a year, 10 years, 50 years? Unless you trigger it with, a multi-megaton thermonuclear device, I don't see how you can predict that down to, all right, everybody, we got to get off the coast. But it is interesting if you think about, what the United Nations, what is it, where they're moving people around.
Agenda 21.
Yeah, that's the one. Sorry, my brain faded for a second. Maybe Agenda 21 is actually trying to look out for people without sparking a panic? What
It's
if
like a depopulation agenda, but preparing for events that are going to lead to a depopulation agenda?
Yeah,
Maybe.
well, what if there is a mass cataclysm coming and it's going to kill a lot of people? And there's nothing we can do about it because we can't stop the motion of stars. We're not there yet. Sorry. So number one, you want to try to minimize how many people are born, because, you know, the fewer people being born, the fewer people that are going to suffer through it. Number two, you want to try to move people off within the U.S. You want to try to move people off the West Coast because, you know, as Bill Hicks would say, we may be looking at Arizona Bay pretty soon. If the San Andreas Fault gives way in the big one they've been talking about for years and years, most of California is not going to be there anymore. I'm hearing that the Cascadia subduction zone in the Pacific Northwest is a more pressing issue. There's also the New Madrid fault line in the center of the U.S. A lot of talk about that. There's Yellowstone. You know, I've never seen the caldera. There's supposedly a massive super caldera under Yellowstone National Park. Right above that caldera is Yellowstone Lake, a really big lake. What happens if there's enough geological disturbance, an earthquake, that kind of thing, to let the lake leak into that caldera en masse? It would be an absolutely massive explosion. It would take out most of the United States. Is it possible there's bad guys that are planning to trigger that with a thermonuclear device? I don't know. It's hard to say. You know, how much are they trying to control this whole process, kick it off on a certain day? Economically, you could certainly see, if you want to include this as part of the cataclysm, they could definitely crash banks on this day. They could crash currencies on this day if they wanted to do that kind of thing. And, you know, you get into end times, the tribulations, and, you know, you see a lot of these possibilities.
What's interesting is that, you know, there is cataclysms, revelations, and then it's like the light, the Christ comes, the light then comes. So it's like if you get it growing pains, it's like you go to this growing pain, but then it's like you've been cleansed. And then you move it, then you pretty much build up. You start building a super strong society.
Absolutely. I hope everybody can hear that, because your microphone is actually, it's starting to go robot voice. I don't know if you can unplug it and plug it back in. Maybe that'll fix it. Maybe we're just speaking too much truth here. Hard to say. But give the mic check. No, still muted. Can you unmute it?
How about now?
Yeah, perfect. But if you want to repeat that, because that was all a really good point. I'm not sure if people could hear that.
So what I was making is that if you look at the Revelations, it talks about going through this, well, let's say it's the Antichrist coming, and there will be like cataclysms and, you know, horrible events, but then the Christ returns. And if you think about this in terms of Yuga cycles and growing Earth, it's like we get cleansed through natural disasters, the growing pains.
Yeah.
Growing pains. It's like a very interesting term
absolutely.
there. It's like we get cleansed of this Kali Yuga, this dark energy, this through the natural process, and then the Christ comes. We ascend into this. It's like we rebuild into this higher consciousness from that point. Like cleanses us, washes us, and then when you start moving in towards our golden age, we're still in the Bronze Age at that point, but then we start moving into this more conscious age, and kind of interesting. I mean, it's something interesting to think about.
Consider this: is this actually what alchemy is all about? Transmuting lead into gold. Is alchemy actually all about transmuting the lead consciousness, the base greed, fear, hate type of consciousness into the ascended being, whereas, peace and love, everybody working together, not a single person on the planet going hungry. That kind of level consciousness.
I
Maybe
totally
that's
think
what it's all about.
I definitely think that you're right. And the opposite of that, black magic is taking the ascended one and bringing it into lower consciousness and controlling them in a way. Or you could say taking the lower consciousness and controlling them. But
they're playing their game. They're playing the opponent, and I can't condone anything that they're doing. It's awful, but man, when you look at it from a broader context, you can kind of see how maybe it's necessary.
I had then two other points, and one I've already touched on, but I think it's cool to retouch on.
Yeah,
is that this again would explain why we seem to be going through this awakening process, why we seem to be waking up, why we seem to be coming to this point where we have to reset everything. Like we need to reset. Like the financial system is a perfect example. We have to. It's got to. It can't keep going on. It's got to reset. It has to. It's not just from a spiritual sense, but from a mathematical sense.
Financially, it is. It's
the fundamentals are just out of control. So this would explain kind of why this is happening. The other thing I had, and this is something a little bit different, but so we look at chemtrails and GMOs, geoengineering.
Right.
Could this be because they're trying to block our antenna almost from receiving this new, more conscious energy that we're getting?
It's funny that you mentioned that,
because it's like they're bringing, and then you could tie transhumanism directly in with this too. They're trying to make us more unnatural, and it seems that the only way you can, when you become higher consciousness, you connect to the natural, to natural law, to the natural systems, and this brings you into the higher consciousness. And I think,
but you
a more higher
from their system, they lose control. You there?
Yeah, sorry, you broke up there for about 10 seconds.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Go ahead. You were saying something?
What did I say? So as humans ascend to that higher consciousness, the more natural state, the controllers lose control of you. If you don't care about money anymore, if you know how to feed yourself just from the environment, they can't control you. If you don't, if they can't bribe you to, abuse other people and threaten other people, any kind of controller class just goes away. They don't have their thugs anymore, of any type. And when it comes down to it, they're just men and women, just like us. And if they're surrounded by people that can't be coerced into doing bad things, like I know you well enough, Tim, like nobody could walk up to you and give you $1,000 and say, go shoot that person. You'd be like, come on, give me a break. There are people on the planet that would say, thank you very much, kaboom. And I want to think at some point that's no longer going to be the case for any amount of money. Give me $1 billion. No, the answer is no. And furthermore, you seem to be a dangerous person. We need to have a little talk.
But if you think about it, they're taking us away from that. They're trying to take us away from natural systems. Although there seems to be a big movement now with this big rise in people wanting organic food and a lot of other things, truth. There seems to be a counter movement going, which seems to be this rise in consciousness. But they're trying to, like chemtrails, it's blocking, they call it solar radiation management, one of the things. And also the way of this spraying aluminums and putting like these metals in our body, which maybe do not let us soak in this energy. Also, if you can think of it as calcifying the pineal gland with different fluoride and GMOs, changing our DNA so maybe it doesn't absorb this energy so well.
It's like today. There was an article I just saw today, and I don't know if I sent it to you. The title of the article is, this is from PubMed.gov, lots of technical research articles. The title is, DNA is a fractal antenna in electromagnetic fields. Here's the abstract. Purpose: to review the responses of DNA to electromagnetic fields in different frequency ranges and characterize the properties of DNA as an antenna.
Right. It's like, if you think about GMOs,
exactly what you're talking about, man.
GMOs is changing the DNA of us. Chemtrails is blocking solar radiation. It's called solar radiation management as one of the main principles. And I tie this in too because there's one really good researcher I like, Dane Wigington, and I've never met him, but he seems like I never met him, so I don't know everything about him. But I do think there's quite a, you find researchers in the alternative community who don't think the planet is warming, don't think it, and I see where they're coming from, and they're doing it also because the global warming that they're pushing is a scam. The whole carbon-based carbon trading phenomenon is a scam. That's I've established that. So I agree with them, but I do think that the planet might be warming.
I think so too now. And how crazy is that to think that?
And I remember we used to go back and forth on the other side completely. And I'm not even saying that we're 100% right on this either. But
that was hardcore. I was like, no, this is all ridiculous. It's not warming. Now they're calling it climate change. Ridiculous. Well, I need to go back and revisit it now. And I hate to say it, but I actually need to go back and watch Al Gore's movie, An Inconvenient Truth, because
it could be truth hidden in plain sight right there.
Absolutely. Not that I think that it's going to be 100% accurate, but maybe it'll give me 80% of the story. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be spun. I'm sure they're going to try to blame it all on industrial output and us driving our SUVs and that sort of thing. And yeah, no, I hate pollution, don't get me wrong, but is it causing global warming? I find that really unlikely. But is the sun moving us into an area of higher energy and getting hotter, and the Earth is getting hotter itself? Is that going to cause some global warming? I don't see how it can't. And actually a really good YouTube channel for tracking this kind of stuff is Suspicious Observers. Observers starts with a 0 rather than an O, but that's a YouTube channel. That boy, isn't that another complete paradigm change? That wow, maybe climate change is a real thing, and we got to start paying some attention when they say that this city or that city is going to be underwater. They might be right, man. It may be that most of Europe is about to be underwater. And now how quickly? Is that going to be in the next 10 years, next 20 years, next 50 years? I can't say. But
it so ties into this transhumanism thing too. Of it's like they're trying to convince us that the more technology and the more we go into this kind of technological
ascension,
they think it's like, because maybe they're tying into the fact that we realize on some subconscious level that we're going into this higher consciousness field. And so they're trying to subvert that subconscious feeling into this transhumanist type agenda, when really that's just a false hope, a false prophet, you could say. Because really the natural energy is really what is going to, we can do this all without that. It's like their ideals of utopia are totally distorted with the transhumanism. I've always thought this, that a really enlightened culture is something completely in tune with the natural surroundings. And I see it more as an agro type, maybe a highly technical, but highly agricultural based society. I've always thought that. I'd always seen society as like really enlightened when you're really around a lot of nature. You might have advanced technology, but you're highly intertwined that with natural law and natural systems. And so in that regard, the whole transhumanism, I mean, the transhumanism is just, to me, tied directly in with trying to stop this conscious energy.
Yeah, it's another way for them to try to keep control. They'll offer us, some really cool capabilities. I'm sure, they'll probably offer a chip that's going to allow you to Skype or Google Hangouts like within your head, without a computer, without a smartphone. You'll just be able to do that with the chip in your head. And man, that seems really cool. Until you realize that they can record all of that conversation. They can cut you off at any time. They can, if you rely on their banking system still, they can turn that off at any time if you misbehave.
Also, when you realize that
completely controlled,
it seems that natural law has a way of blowback against all these unnatural systems, GMOs, all these cancers and different things. They always seem to, when you go against natural law, there are unintended consequences that blow back at you. And it seems that there are lots of like with all this technology. I mean, all these radiations going through us and cancers, and it seems to always blow back.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen it's breaking into mainstream media now that cell phones are carcinogenic. If you're the kind of person that holds a phone up to your ear all day long, you're several percent more likely to get cancer on that side because you're blasting yourself with microwave waves. And nobody would open up a microwave and stick their head in it and hit the on button, and granted it's a lesser amplitude, but it's the same stuff. And
I read about a woman, a 16-year-old girl. She put her phone in her bra, like where her boob was, and she got breast cancer at like 17 years old because it was there all the time. And it's just basically radiating part of your body.
And men, you got to think, I don't do it now, but years gone by, I would, just slip my phone in my front pocket. You got to wonder how many cases of testicular cancer that's caused over the years. And mine's always in my right pocket. So if my right boy turns up with cancer, I kind of know why.
Right.
But enough about that. So that's all the bad news, the gloom and doom about moving forward. There's really good news too. It's at least as good, if not better, than the bad news, because we're said to be entering a time of spiritual ascension, a time where we're going to be getting smarter, more intuitive, more empathic. I don't know about you, Tim. I'm already feeling this, man. Like,
we wouldn't be talking about this right now. If you would have talked to me 4 years ago about any of this, man, I would have.
I would have blown you off like this. Absolutely, absolutely. And it's a weird thing, and this is a new thing for me that I'm experiencing. My pineal gland has been fully engorged for about the past month. It's been the craziest things, and I've just been getting all these intuitive insights. It's almost like a download from source wisdom or something. It's really hard to explain, but I gotta think this is just the start, and I'm doing everything I can to try to clear up that signal, to try to tune my body to receive this energy and process it well. And we don't have time to go into,
I was going to say, I actually think in the very near future, we want to do a whole podcast just on that particular topic of, tuning it seems to be, and this is just a very brief introduction. And you've done a lot of good stuff on this. You have to tune your body to receive this signal. And like, it seems to give you better intuition. It's like why you cleanse, like in meditation, you kind of cleanse the mind and clear the mind so it can better receive information. And I have noticed these things, and it might not be like you're a superhuman right out there, but if you practice it and you stay at it, and this is what everyone talks about who's practices for long periods of times with yoga and meditation and even prayer, and different sound frequencies can help tune it. You've really tuned me into that more, but
we could do a whole show on that.
Right, we'll leave that for another show. But
for sure,
it kind of it seems that all these things that they're doing are trying to disharmonize us from these frequencies
to detune us. Like if
Right.
we're a radio, we're trying to tune into a signal. So if you have a radio and you want to tune into a signal, first of all, there has to be a signal there to tune. If it's super, super weak, you can be on the exact right frequency and you're still not going to get much signal. But by the same token, it can be a very strong signal, and if you're not tuned to it correctly, you're still not going to receive anything. Now, we seem to be moving into an area of higher energy, which translates to higher consciousness. So if we can also, we have a stronger signal, if we can also tune our bodies correctly, and I don't think it's that hard, man. I think this is really a pretty easy thing to do, at least in concept. But we'll get into it in the future.
It seems like something we all want too.
I think so too.
And we're all subconsciously kind of feeling. Some more than others, and some have started this journey earlier than others. I think it's like a bell curve. You have early adopters, and then you have, and so we're kind of just on that early spot still. But I really see it starting to rise. But any other? I've wrapped up all my points, but any other points? I know you got some other points you wanted to get in before we wrap it up and call the show here.
Just in the last little segment, I wanted to go really speculative. I mean, just really go out there. This is just throwing ideas at the wall and just having fun with it. So don't take this too seriously, but this stuff is fun to talk about. So I hope folks will indulge me a bit. We mentioned a Rodin coil at the beginning of this. A Rodin coil is essentially just a super efficient electromagnet. It's just using some very clever, interesting math, vortex-based mathematics, to describe how to wind an electromagnet in a very specific way that generates a very strong electromagnetic field, like literally 1,000 times stronger than if you just took a nail and just wrapped a bunch of wire around it, which I've done. And those things are really strong. So I kind of want a Rodin coil to play with. But what if the Milky Way is kind of like a big, gigantic Rodin coil, okay? And rather than waiting around thousands of years for our sun to drag us towards areas of higher energy, higher magnetism, is it possible to accelerate that process artificially by taking this ascension process rather than having to do it all naturally? I don't know. This might be heresy or something, because we're in a weird sort of way bridging the gap between transhumanism and doing it all natural. But would it be possible to accelerate this ascension process by literally just sticking a Rodin coil on your head like a crown and running, say, a 432 hertz sine wave through the thing? Or would that just give you brain cancer? I don't know. I don't have a Rodin coil to play with. I really want one. I'll have to get one at some point. Okay, now take that idea. What if CERN, the Large Hadron Collider, is kind of like a large Rodin coil, okay? If we're on target with the stuff we're talking about, and the whole solar system is about to move into an area of higher energy, higher magnetism, scientists need to know what that's going to do rather than just, a couple guys sitting around talking about it. They need to understand what exactly effects is this going to have on plant growth, on human consciousness, on all sorts of things. So wouldn't it be prudent to build themselves a big Rodin coil and try to simulate this area of higher magnetism, higher energy ahead of time before we get there, so they can understand what we have in store in the next 100,000, several thousand years? I think that would make sense. I personally never thought the description of, well, they're just speeding up particles and smashing them together and seeing what happens and looking for a Higgs boson. It just doesn't seem to hold water to me. I don't think that's what they're doing. I think they're trying to see what's going to happen when we move into an area of higher magnetism, higher energy.
I mean, you think about it too. What I've read too, and now you could just go on this more. I believe it along with the rodent coil and like the 432 hertz Pythagorean tuning,
Yes.
it helps. It actually accelerates growth in things.
It does
Like
seem to.
like plants,
Plant growth.
accelerate growth. And you look at like how sound affects like kymatics. Sound affects different patterns and different things, and there seem to be maybe optimal patterns.
We're mostly water.
Right.
You know?
And sacred geometry points to this, and different new mathematical anomalies that are ever present in nature. And so tuning into these.
We got to do a show just on this. This is such a fun topic,
because it's like natural law in mathematics, in geometry, and then sound, that are all connected, and tuning into those accelerates growth in a way. And so that's kind of what I was pointing to in a way. But
now there's lots of experiments on YouTube where you see people, they've taken a rodent coil, stuck it under a plant, and they've had a control plant, and the one they stuck it under grows a lot faster. You don't even need a rodent coil. You can do the same thing with music. I actually think this is the real purpose of music, to help tune your DNA at a cellular level, to help tune it in to receiving the natural prana, ether, and process it more efficiently.
How, and I love for you to talk about this for just a second. How like the ohms of monks aren't just they're not just ohms. They're at a particular frequency.
They are.
They're always at a particular frequency. The bowls that they tap, the meditation bowls, the sound bowls, they're at a particular frequency or tuning.
Very, very particular. They're not just saying ohm in whatever note. They're not. It is a certain frequency, and I believe the reason for that is, for example, if you want to stimulate the pineal gland, the frequency is 288 hertz, or any octave of that. So it could be 144, 72. And I hope I'm not misspeaking, but that's okay, because that's just off the top of my head. And it seems to help with me. I've personally never had much luck with meditation. I sit there, I say Om, and nothing seems to happen. But now that I kind of understand the frequencies better, I can just play a sine wave frequency of 288 hertz for the third eye. Your crown chakra is 432 hertz. Your heart chakra is 256 hertz. And I just throw together sine waves of those and just lay in a straight line and breathe. And my old pineal gland just starts, you start feeling the pressure between your eyeballs. It's hard to explain until you see it yourself. I'm not astral projecting, nothing like that. I'm just laying there, and it's kind of a pleasant, it's kind of like a headache that feels nice. Or if I can be crass, it feels like an erection between your eyeballs, an erection in your brain, a brain boner, if you want to call it that. And I can't say for sure what that's doing, but from what I read, from talking with my yoga instructor, and yes, I have a yoga instructor now, she's like, that's receiving wisdom. That's a very interesting thing to me. So I can't say I do it every night. Some nights I just get tired and fall asleep. But about every other night, I'm doing this, and I'm just trying to see where it takes me. And I do seem to be having a lot more eureka moments, a lot more intuitive flashes.
I do find when I listen to that frequency, and I still have to get all the tuning down, I do seem to my brain just seems to be more clear, is the best way I can describe it. And I'm able to think a little bit more clear. It's not as chaotic. It's, if you think about it, clear would probably mean harmonic. It's tuned to what it's naturally tuned to. And I'm not saying this is not a
Little tune-up
perfect thing, but it does feel like it's easier to think, it's easier to process. And I would think this is then when your head is clear, you have better intuition. I always think about this example that I it's actually used for sports. I found it through sports psychology, but I found it as a great example.
Okay.
You know, like meditation and yoga and these different holistic practices. It's like pool water. If you take care every day of your pool water, you're not gonna. The environment within the water is not going to be have the proper conditions for these algae and different parasites and whatever to grow in it. It's you're refreshing it every day. And so by doing this with the mind and the pineal gland and the body, you're refreshing it all the time and retuning it. You could say it literally goes hand in hand. So then it can keep working at its core potential. And it doesn't build up. It doesn't get to a point where it can allow these cancers and stuff to grow within it. And I totally think that there is something to that.
Yeah, I think so too. If people want to look a little more into this after the show, Jamie Buterf approaches this from a scientific left brain sort of approach, which I really appreciate. I have an engineering background, and for me, just a new age person talking about your chakras and raising your vibrations, it just doesn't mean anything to me. But Jamie Buterf, he really breaks it down, what the different frequencies do, why these particular frequencies are important. It has to do with the doubling circuit. It's all just math. Very, very, very simple math. It's math that a second grader could do. And we've been led to believe that all this stuff is just, there's no way you could possibly understand it. You can't understand how stars affect you because you're not an astrophysicist. You couldn't possibly understand that. Those are the smartest people on the planet. And we gotta push through that idea. We are smart enough to be able to understand this at a high enough level to take advantage of it. This is our birthright. I really feel this is our birthright, this ascension process. And I don't know about you, but I'm grabbing it with both hands. So I hope more people
obviously us doing these last few podcasts, which have been, honestly, I don't find not to say that we're, we're any better than anyone else. It's just, I feel like we've really running with our intuitive and this, I don't even know where it's coming from, but just trying to follow. So
that's a really good point. It's not like I'm a famous historian or you're a famous astrophysicist. We're two fairly regular guys, I'd say reasonably intelligent guys, but we're nobody particularly special. And I think that in itself is really interesting. If you and I can figure this stuff out, then I think our listeners can figure it out themselves. But I don't want them to just take our word for this. I want them to hear a little something, go, that's interesting. I need to look into that more, because I really feel that this whole, if you call it an ascension process, a consciousness raising, the whole point of this is us to stop just taking other people's word for it. Stop looking to authorities to define our truth and our reality, and start taking responsibility for ourselves and investigating reality and finding truth for ourselves. And if we do that, like if we look at the stars directly, they can't mess with the stars. The stars are going to be where they're going to be. If we read a book to find things out, you don't know. Maybe you're being misled.
I got a really good quote just talking about what you literally just addressed there with kind of finding your own truth in a way. Let me pull it up real quick here. Here we go. And by Carl Jung, he says, your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. And it's almost like when you look outside, you're dreaming, but maybe it's not reality. But when you look inside, in a way of finding your own truth, not to say you don't look outside for clues and to help define it, but when you really look inside to find your own truth, that's when you really awaken and become more intelligent. And we talked about a little earlier, it seems like a lot of people who do that, they come to a similar points though, which is quite interesting at the same time. So any last points to wrap it up? I'm about to wrap it up here. Any last speculative points? I'm sure you got one or two.
We've been going for a while. I just wanted to close with a pop culture reference to Sirius, and there are a lot of them. If the Truman Show has a light that almost falls down on Jim Carrey, and he looks at it and it says Sirius on it. Whoa, that's kind of a wake up call. And there's several references in there. But the one I like is the story of Pinocchio. Okay, Geppetto, the puppet maker, he wants to have a real boy. Okay, so he makes a puppet out of wood, carves him out of wood, and he's just sitting there. And then he goes to the window, and he prays to the brightest bluish white star in the sky. Prays for life to come to Pinocchio, and Pinocchio springs to life. Now he's just a puppet. He has to go through his ordeals before he becomes a real boy. But I feel like that's kind of what we're doing right now. We are cutting our strings, ceasing to be puppets, and becoming real humans. So that's all I had to say.
I love that analogy. But yeah, great way to wrap it up on that point. And yeah, like I had prefaced before, don't take our word for it. Go look yourself. I'm gonna drop a lot of links in the show notes. There's gonna be a lot of links for you to just go explore yourself and expand upon this. If you have any links for us, drop them in the show in the comment section.
Absolutely.
I'd love to read. I'd love for people to expand farther. Take this farther. Disprove us if you can. I mean, I'm open to it all. Yeah. This is not a set thing. It's just an exploration for us. Yeah. And anyways, it's just getting started. So please run with this and explore it more. Once again, Jay, thanks for joining us. This has been a really fun podcast to do. Something we've been wanting to do for a few weeks now.
Absolutely.
But I hope the listeners did learn something. And if you like this video, please subscribe, share the video, spread it. Just trying to get this information out more and get more people talking about it and covering
it. You got people on iTunes now, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And we're going to have this. If you want to download it on iTunes, just type in Infinite Expansion, and we have our podcast up there. There's also the Last American Vagabond podcast from the creator of the Last American Vagabond, Ryan Christian, has his own podcast. Definitely check those out. It's got a lot of good stuff on there.
Absolutely.
Just did one about curing your own cancer and alternative medicine. So really good one to check out. So a lot of there's also Altered Boy podcast for another writer we have, Anthony, which are on YouTube at the moment, but we're processing those over to iTunes. So a lot of good stuff. Check out the website if you haven't. And yeah, let's just keep this journey going and keep raising our consciousness. That's why and they named it Infinite Expansion to continue.
That worked out.
Right, to continually explore. And I didn't want to, I don't want to be defined by one thing. It's an infinite growth type thing. So thank you again. Hope you learned something, and we'll do it again. Thanks, Jay.
All right. Thanks, Tim. I'll see you guys in the comments.